This is Nan McKay, and this is part of our Pivot to Soar series. We're interviewing trailblazers who pivoted away from their former career to another venture by creating a business. Our guest today is Riah Gonzalez. Riah, take us on your pivot journey. What was your career prior to pivoting to entrepreneurship, and what business are you in now?
Well, they're totally separate, so it is definitely a pivot, but I spent 20 years in administrative management in healthcare, primarily in specialty small practices, doing a variety of administrative tasks as well as management. And then I was working at the time to become a nurse practitioner. I was taking classes and preparing myself in that way. And then then life happened, in terms of, quite a few things personally and professionally happened. I had made quite a few changes in my jobs, trying to get experience to set things up to get into school. And one of those things was accepting a job that I knew was probably not a good fit, but was going to deliver me the clinical experience that I needed. And many, many times I should have quit that job, but I did not. And instead, as I like to say, the universe quit it for me and I was let go. And what I ended up doing at that time was I had been doing on the side, I had been doing some consulting and administrative work for financial professionals. And so that became a business, the beginnings of my business that I have now.
Well, I can certainly relate to it because I have a relative that was starting in healthcare, and that is a long process.
It is.
By the time you finally get to one milestone, whether it's nurse practitioner or whatever, it seems like there's another milestone right ahead of you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So it was something that I was begrudging in the beginning. I said, I worked 4 10s in the job that I had. And so my friend had begged me to help her in her financial practice. I had 2 clients that I was helping, and I was in counseling at the time, and I was just really devastated by getting fired. And I kept saying that I was unemployed. And she said, Riah, you have 2 clients. That's called self-employed. That is not unemployed. That is self-employed. And it was something that I wasn't ready to embrace. I didn't choose to be an entrepreneur, but the thought of going out and applying for another job, and I just didn't know what I wanted to, I just felt like the well-laid plans that I had were askew, and I didn't know what else to do. And so I just kept kind of doing the same thing. And I did that for several months until I said, okay, well, I guess I should get a business license, and I guess I should do something, actually figure this out. And so the first business, or the first iteration of this business, was called Admin Prestige. And it was for at first just me. It's a virtual assistant / consulting. And then it became a virtual assistant agency where I had other virtual assistants that worked with me. And now it's become something completely different. So
I think the number one reason people are afraid to pivot is the financial decision. How am I going to be able to make it financially? And you kind of had that decision taken away from you.
Absolutely.
You ran right into a business and got some very good advice to say, you've already got 2 clients. Hey, move on.
Yes. I would still say, I still tell people, if you have a choice and you're planning on going into business, be more mindful about planning capital, because even though I had 2 clients, I was undercharging significantly because I wasn't thinking they were a side job. I was doing a favor for friends. And so I wasn't charging like you would as a consultant. I wasn't charging as you would to make a living. I was charging as somebody doing a favor as a friend. Well, I can't suddenly say, well, I got fired, so now my fees are 5 times the amount that, that they were. So I tell people, if you're thinking about going into business, be mindful that in the beginning years, you're really not going to be able to pay yourself, or it's going to be very small, the amount that you're going to be able to pay yourself, because if you're doing it right, you're investing quite a bit of money into your business. And I did not pay myself for 18 months, and that was excruciating. And and there were many financial decisions I could have done differently. And I think the other thing that I would say is for people to understand, I have a podcast called The Client Experience Revolution. I have an episode called Sexy, Sexy Money, where I interviewed an accountant, and we talked about the fact that just because it's deductible doesn't mean that you should buy it. And so you have to really think, do I need this thing? Is this crucial to me moving to the next step? And be a good steward of the money that your business is making, because everything that you spend is $1 away from spending it back on giving it to yourself. And so it's, the financial is real. It is a real thing that people not be afraid of, but be aware of, that in the beginning, it's quite a challenge. Having any savings is very helpful. Be a good steward of your money. Don't go out, guns a-blazing. And just because it's deductible doesn't mean it's a good decision.
Did you have a person in your household that was also working? So that helped.
Yeah, that was the only way that this worked. If you are a single person going into business, you absolutely must have a big old chunk of savings, because the only way that this worked, and by worked, I mean, it did not work. I mean, it was a big devastation to our household to go from 2 incomes to less than 1 income, because not only did we not have my income, but my income was draining from his income. And so, so if you are a single person going into business, you must be very, very conscious of the fact that you need to have a large amount of money stocked away so that you can pay yourself, pay your responsibilities, do the investments that you need to do in your business, and feel confident in doing that. And it's not something that, again, it's not something that you should be afraid of. It's something to be mindful of.
I love that description. That's really interesting on that statement. Not be afraid of it, but be mindful of it. You're absolutely right. I've seen some people before COVID that immediately went out and rented a space, and it was, they wanted to impress their clients. And, I would have said in my first 5 years of my business, I worked out of the basement of my house.
Yes.
And really, you don't need all the trappings. And now COVID has shown us we really don't need all the trappings, right?
Yeah, it's funny, like, it's not funny, but it's ironic. So I do a lot of networking, and I had a couple co-working memberships where I would meet people for coffee. And the week before COVID shut everything down, I signed a lease on a very modest office. It was very, it was probably the cost of my co-working spaces. So the thought was I would discontinue my co-working memberships, and I would have this space, and I would make it a space where people could come to me, and then it would be more efficient, and I could make it comfortable, and it could be a little coffee place where we could network and have fun, And I signed a year lease. COVID hit, and we were able to, and I worked there, but I honestly worked more from home than I did there because I had a child in online school. And then I gave up the lease at the end of it because I just realized I don't need it. We're never going to go back to the same way that it was before. We're going to be virtually networking. If we meet in person, we'll figure out another way. It'll be like a Starbucks or a something or other, and it's just, that's that. And it's one less thing that I need to worry about. And so I brought all of it. Also, what happened during that time is I had a child move out. I have an older children. And so it made space for me to have an office inside the home. And so I was able to recreate that space in my home and pay $0 except for the expense of what I was already paying to have a roof over my head. So it's funny how, this has really taught us, but like I said, even in paying for an office space, it was in an old historic building in a bedroom. It was very, very modest, like nothing fancy, because even at that time I was like, I really don't need the fancy schmancy office. I just want a space where I can discontinue these co-working spaces and just have them come to me with the thought of being more efficient in my time, so I'm not driving around all the time. So we've learned a lot about what we can do without.
Yes, and I think that's a really good point you made, that you spend a lot of time in the past just getting from one place to another.
Yes.
And then clothes and what you had to look like. And it's a lot of people have found, I kind of like the way it is working at home.
Yes, I definitely do too. Because I had two offices, I had one at home and one, what you can't see is in the corner back here is I have a whole nother setup. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this computer and, all this stuff? Well, half the time that I'm in meetings and whatnot, my 11-year-old is playing video games in the corner, just quietly, doing her thing. But I get to be with her, I get to spend time with her, even if we're not having an active conversation. I have a couch over here where sometimes while I'm having meetings, my husband will just sit and like tinker on his phone or whatever. And I get to be with him and, and we get to be together. And, it's a nice arrangement to be close to people. Of course, then sometimes you're like, I'd like a little space too.
Now, you had your first two customers. How did you get the rest of your customers? How'd you grow your business?
So I thought in the beginning that I would serve just financial professionals. I did spend some time in amongst the 20 years of healthcare. There was a 2-year period of time where I was a financial professional for a very large Fortune 100 company. And so I had made some connections there. And so the reason why they wanted me was because I could come into their business so they didn't have to explain anything. I intrinsically knew what they needed. I could flip things upside down. I could help them and make a difference right away. And so I thought, well, okay, this is the way that I'll serve people. And even in that instance of me being a financial professional, I was a networker. I get out there, I meet people, I talk to people, I connect people to other people, even if they have nothing to do with my business. And so that's really how I started. And in the beginning, I picked up, different clients from different industries from networking, and, varied industries. And it was actually COVID that caused me to really rethink, how I was doing this. And because I just decided that I didn't want to serve people the same way. I didn't want to be the producer, the actual virtual assistant, even if it was on a higher level. And I had a really bad car accident, and then the pandemic hit. And I just thought, and I wasn't able to network in the same way. And And then an idea came to me via accident, God, whatever. I had a friend who I had built a team in the Philippines. That's my team is primarily in the Philippines. And she said, I want to hire somebody in the Philippines too, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. And so she says, I want to have you help me do that. She's like, I'll pay you, but I need to have you help me do that. And it turned out so well. She's like, Riah, you need to bottle this. Like, this is so great. And so what I did was I pivoted my business, not the consulting side, because I do client re-engagement consulting. That has always been part of my business. But instead of being the virtual assistant, I now matchmake and help people find their virtual assistant in the Philippines. And so, it's the finding of the clients is really still just shifted from in-person networking to being parts of groups and getting to know people via conversation.
That's interesting too. So what I think I'm hearing you say is that you just do the matchmaking from the person, let's say, that wants somebody on Fiverr, and you say, okay, I'm going to matchmake this person with this person, or do those people funnel through you and you're on Fiverr?
Nope, none of the above. So we use a website. There's a website that I like called onlinejobs.ph. It's sort of like an indeed.com. And so I do a very detailed consultative process with the client of what it is that they're looking for. We create a job description that really draws in and attracts that person specifically. And then we take it from there. We list the job description, we receive the applications, we do the initial interviews, we do all the screening. We narrow the applicants down, we get sample works from them, and then we deliver a list of 3 candidates to our clients. And typically our clients are looking for somebody who's a freelancer, maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, but they want to work with them long-term. They don't want to work with them on a project base. Fiverr is fantastic, but Fiverr is really structured to be a project-based site. These are people looking to have somebody who maybe they can't afford a virtual assistant or don't want to pay for a virtual assistant here in the United States. They'd prefer to pay less, but still have somebody very skilled. One of the beautiful things about what we do is that we're actually providing for a better quality of life for somebody in a third world country. So we do the whole process with the needs in mind of the client, and matching them specifically with somebody who can meet those needs.
And then who does your client contract with? Do they contract with you or the person you find?
Directly with the person that we find. We don't do anything past, they pick who they like. We give them advice on what things that have worked best in terms of finding making a work agreement and making sure your expectations are clear. There's part of the process is I do a consultation of helping them with things that have worked well for me in terms of leadership, pitfalls that I've found, my mistakes that I've made, some cultural considerations that I've stumbled on, tech stack things like how do you communicate with your worker? How do you pay that person? How do you assign tasks to that person? Things that are practical tips to have an ongoing relationship with somebody who is perhaps working in a different time zone than you and, in a different culture and country. And so, but it's my belief there are many different services that do similar things that I do. I believe we do it better. I actually know we do it better because it's more what am I trying to say? I would say it's more specialized, it's more personalized and customized for both the freelancer and the person that we're helping. There's choice on the part of the client, and there's information that they're given that they may not have if they try to do it on their own. And then we're not trying to make a buck after the decision has been made. We've given them the tools to continue that relationship on their own. And we're not managing over the top of and collecting pay over the top of what they would be paying that person.
I just think that's fascinating. You've looked at the opportunities that are available and what's needed now in the remote society, in a sense, in the business environment. And you've just made a great opportunity match for yourself and for other people.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. And what's really beautiful is my clientele is 99.9% female. And the assistants that we place are 99.9% female. So it's like this beautiful female empowerment, like my clients may not have the ability to hire somebody, or if they did hire somebody here, they would do it on a much reduced level because of the pay scale that they would need to do, which, not to knock US-based OBMs and BAs, there is absolutely a value in that. And I refer all the time because this is not for everybody. Some people really need somebody in the same time zone. They want somebody in the same culture. They want, all of those things. And so in my recommendations, I always put, let me know if this is not for you. I have recommendations and referrals that I can refer you to a US-based virtual assistant or online business manager, because there is definitely a place for that person. But for some people, the price point of a US-based virtual assistant prices them out. They can't ask for help. So this can be an entry point where they can have somebody help them, and then maybe they can have a US-based person who's like a launch assistant, or who is an online business manager, and they're kind of running the show, and this other person is underneath them, or whatever it might be. It allows them to scale in a small way, in an economical way, where they're just getting their feet wet, but they can afford it, and they can get more help than they would if they were only limited to a US-based online business manager or virtual assistant.
Let's talk about your podcast.
Love it. Yes.
Exciting. And since obviously we do a podcast as well, it's a hard business to be in sometimes, isn't it? From the revenue production piece of it.
Yes, it is. It's funny. Well, my podcast is not yet monetized. It's a labor of love. It's funny. I've been doing it for 2 years, and my 11-year-old said, "Mom, do you have a commercial on your podcast for your business?" And I said, "No, I don't." So the next week I recorded a commercial for my business and put it on my podcast. But I do, the only way that I've monetized in a very small way is I host my podcast on anchor.fm, which I do recommend actually as a very solid way to start your podcast, because it's a free podcasting platform. And when you're starting a podcast, which is a lot of fun, but there's lots of options as far as how you can host that and how you can organize that. And a lot of them have costs, some of them don't. And so when you can find, especially when you're not monetizing, when you can find a free way to do it and not sacrifice quality or accessibility, because this actually does push out to many, many, many sources. That's really important to me. I wanted to make sure that it still had the value and the accessibility.
Well, it's an interesting business to be in because you get to meet so many people. You know,
Yes,
get to talk to people like, and you don't have to go out to do it.
exactly.
But I think that the downside is the revenue side. I think a lot of people think that somehow they're going to get a sponsor right away, and it just it doesn't really happen. You know, you have to get about, I would say, minimum of 5,000 episodes, downloads per episode. Well, my God, 5,000 downloads per episode is huge in the beginning, huge. And a few people make it, but you know, most podcasts don't. So if you go into it knowing that and saying, okay, is this a labor of love, or is this something that's really going to make me money? It's probably going to err on the labor of love side. Do you agree with that?
100%. And I went into that really right away with that mindset, you know, like just knowing that I never even track the analytics, to be really honest with you, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me who listens, because I'm putting value out there for people. And if they listen, awesome. If they don't, I got value from that conversation. And so I've learned so much. I've gotten so much free coaching. I've met so many amazing people. I've made so many connections. I feel that I've advanced my career in many, many ways by having these conversations. And yeah, if you think you're going to monetize your podcast right away, then you need to know that it's not like that. You better be ready to make it your full-time job and get viral on TikTok and Instagram and somehow magically make it appear. But it really is a labor of love.
Tell me about whether it's your current business, your admin business, virtual assistant business, or your podcast. It's all entrepreneurship. Tell me one of your surprises that you've had along the way.
I think I've surprised myself in my ability to lead. You know, I've held, I mean, my degree is administrative management. And my favorite book in the whole entire world is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. And I've always felt that you could lead from any position. And I've always held the tenet of servant leadership, you know, putting people above yourself and leading from that space. But when you put your feet to the fire and you have to have difficult conversations, and you have to either let somebody go, or you have to, you know, lovingly correct somebody, or, you know, bring things online. I'm really freaking good at it. I mean, and it's very emotional for me. It's very hard for me, but I always think to myself, I'm so glad it's me that's doing this, because I love this person. I care about this person, and I'm going to do it in a way that is honoring to their personhood. And anyone else might not take the same care that I do. And so that has been very shocking to me, how adept I am in that way of having the hard conversations, even though it's extremely uncomfortable for me.
In thinking about, again, the 3 businesses we've been talking about, what would you have done differently if you'd known something that you know now?
Gosh, I think there's a lot of things I would have done differently. I made some very large financial decisions early on that negatively impacted everything moving forward. One of them being I engaged with a branding firm thinking that would bring clarity to my business and help me stop throwing spaghetti at the wall. Well, I emerged with a beautiful logo, which feel free to check out at linqcs.com. That's LINQCS.com. I emerged with a beautiful logo and colors and things like that. I did not emerge with clarity. I did not emerge with this magical sense of knowing what I was doing. And I emerged with a lot of debt. And I'm still recovering in some ways from that, because it put me behind right from the get-go. And I wish that I would have made a different choice, and I wish I would have taken advantage more of all of the amazing free options there are available through the Small Business Administration, through right now I'm in Washington, so we have the Washington Women's Business Organization. I just this last couple of weeks found out that you can get a free business coach, unlimited, once a week free business coach. I have spent upwards of $25,000 in business coaching in the last 3 years. I mean, just that, like not availing myself of the free resources available. I mean, I could have put $25,000 in my pocket or invested $25,000 in something in my business and advanced my business in that way. And so that's something that I would recommend and really do over. I would do that over. I might not do over like all of it. You know what I mean? I think there are things you must invest in yourself, but I do more research, and I would be more mindful, and I would also be I would definitely avail myself of the resources available that are free.
Now, I can really relate to what you're saying, because I have contracted with people sometimes that I thought, oh, certainly they will be able to make this difference and I'll be able to make this leap from here to here. And found that either I hadn't been clear about what I expected, and maybe I didn't know what I was expecting or to expect, or they really didn't have the credentials that I needed, that I thought they had. But it's hard when you're small like this and you're starting out to know this new world that we're into, and
Yes.
what do we really need for SEO, and what do we really need for whatever it is we're trying to do, and how we get those services. Hard.
Yes. And I think we have to make those big financial decisions, and we can do, you like, honestly, you can have a one-page website that you built for free, and you could be very, very successful and make a lot of money with a one-page website that you built for free. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to be fancy. You have to have something that meets a need for people that they're willing to pay. You have to be personable. People have to like you. You have to be confident to ask for money. You have to have a method of collecting that money. You need to have a way of scheduling. But you don't need all the things, all the things. And I think that we get caught in the trappings of what business can be.
What do you think? Would you call that your best tip for entrepreneurship, or lessons learned, or do you have any others?
I think that would be I think that would be the biggest tip. You know what I mean? If I could do it all over again, I would be a lot more simple, especially until I had a lot of clarity around what it is that I'm all about, because that takes time. So, it's okay to start small, and it's preferable to start small. Don't spend big money when you're a small business. Yeah, that would be my biggest tip.
What do you like best about your entrepreneurial lifestyle?
Naps in the middle of the day.
Tell me again.
Naps in the middle of the day. I do take, because I will usually have very early morning meetings, because I have a lot of East Coast clients, so extremely early mornings, and I am not a morning person. And then my team all works in, their morning is my late evening, And so I typically will take a half an hour rest or nap in the middle of the day because I have to split my day.
I totally, relate to nap in the middle of the day. I thought you said not in the middle of the day.
Oh yeah, no, nap.
Not.
No,
Nap, all right.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. I think, if you're gonna have an international empire, as I do and as I'm building, you have to be flexible with different time zones, and you need to also be honoring of what your body is capable of doing. And I am not 19 years old anymore. I'm definitely not old by any standards, but I need to rest, and I'm not a morning person. And if I'm doing a 6 a.m. mastermind, which means I'm getting up at 5 something in the morning to get ready for a 6 a.m. mastermind with a group of ladies, and then I'm up until 11, 12 p.m. with, or 12 a.m. with my team, I need a nap in the middle of the day to be able to rejuvenate. And even if that nap is laying down and scrolling through TikTok for 45 minutes, that's rejuvenating for me. That's something that that allows me to have the energy to continue on my day.
Well, it's been so much fun talking to you, Riah.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else that you would like to say before we leave?
I just would encourage anybody who is thinking about it, do your research, but don't be afraid. It's not as sexy as sometimes it looks like it is. There's a lot of hard work involved. There's a lot of sleepless nights involved, and there's a lot of moneyless months in the beginning. However, there's a lot of perks to it too. And, I can work from anywhere in the world at any time that I want to. And I couldn't say that before. And so I have quite a few trips planned, and I'm going to be working through all of those trips. And I can just schedule those, and I don't have to think about asking for PTO or worried about whether or not my boss is going to approve it, because my boss approves that message. So, because I am that boss. So it's okay. It's hard, but it's good hard. It pushes you. You learn the greatest things about yourself, and you are pushed to the limits of what your capacity is, and you learn quite a bit about who you are as a person. So I would encourage people who have it within them and have a desire for it to go for it. And also don't be afraid to not go for it. If you don't feel that you can, that sounds like something that you can withstand, don't do it. It's okay to not be an entrepreneur. It is challenging. And it is something that is hard, and I think it's not for everyone. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such fun talking to you, and we just wish you loads of luck in all these things you've got going on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.